Good evening. I am Mayor Beverly H. Burks, and this is the special called City Council meeting, public hearing for Thursday, June 26, 2025 at 6 p.m. We will start with roll call. Um, Councilman Carroll,
Present.
Councilwoman Adi,
Present.
Councilwoman Hood,
Present.
Councilwoman Bell. Is she online? Not yet. Okay. Councilman Perkins.
Present.
And the vice mayor's on her way, and I recognize our city manager, Chaquia Miller Thornton. So at this time, public comments, we will not have public comments. We will wait for the hearing portion of it, and we will move to new business, which is the presentation of the proposed 2025 millage rate by our city manager, Ms. Miller Thornton.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mayor. I'll just pick up where we left off from our last meeting. At that particular time, we presented a reduced mill rate of 17.528. This particular rate would result in a 28.28% property tax increase, with a proposed tax increase for a home with a fair market value of $275,000 being approximately $386.40 for the annual increase. Yeah, keep going. Go. Mhm. Mhm. One more. One more. Right there. Thank you. And the proposed tax increase for a non-homestead property with a fair market value of $925,000 being approximately $1,449 for the year. In the interim of the last public hearing and this public hearing, my office and the finance office had an opportunity to again look at property tax digest, to continue an analysis of our budget, to receive some additional information from tax assessor's office regarding appeals. And we have therefore presented an updated mill rate scenario for the council to consider. Next slide. Right there. So the recommendation that is forthcoming is based on a few things. An estimate of reductions in payroll and related expenditures has been identified within the city's general fund appropriations in the amount of $564,516. That's an increase from the previous reduction in expenditures of $549,953. This decrease includes implementation of a hiring freeze on a number of vacant positions, approximately $297,510, a delay of hire date for additional positions in the amount of $128,101 approximately. Estimated salaries and wages reduction is approximately $458,170. An implemented cost of living increase that was initially set to begin July 1 is recommended for August 1, 2025, a 3% increase with an amount of $53,211. The effective start date is moved from July 1 to August 1 in consideration of the city's cash flow. Reimbursement of the general fund salary expense due from the city's American Rescue Plan Act funds estimated at $159,556. Total decrease in expenditure estimated at $564,516. Further analysis of updated appeals loss values for the years 2022 through 2024 to include 2024 properties still in appeal. We understand that as long as the property is in appeal, you can only, it is only assessed at 85% of the value. And that has warranted a reduction of estimated loss value from $22,611,465, the equivalent of 5.8%, to $19,552,582, which is 5.1%. So we estimate a loss in the value of the digest of just over $9.5 million. The average rate of collection has been increased from 82% to 86%. This accounts for that loss of value and reconciled estimate of collections for 2024 through October of 2024. Therefore, new mill rate scenario to balance the city's amended budget expectations with a reduction of expenditures in the amount of $564,516, with an estimated collection rate of 86% to include loss value, is 16.625 mills. This particular mill rate is an increase of 21.67%, down from the 41.23% initially adopted at tentative adoption rate of 19.298. Approximate tax increase for a homestead property with a value of $275,000 is $296.10 for the year. Approximate tax increase for a non-homestead property at a value of $925,000 is $1,110.38, which is down from the $2,112.75 tentative with the tentative adopted rate. Next slide, please. Secondary rate scenario has also been presented to the council at 15.999 mills. This produces a $195,310 revenue deficit, with the total general fund balance needed to balance the budget to date at $370,310. This includes the revenue deficit of $195,000 plus the $80,000 that was appropriated at time of budget adoption, and the $95,000 that that has been determined could not be used from police seizure funds for the move to 736 Park North. All right, so the 16.625 mill rate meets the amended budget expectations for the 2025 fiscal year. This rate is a reduction of 2.673 mills under the tentatively adopted rate of 19.298. This rate provides for a reduction in the percentage of property tax increase from 41.23% to 21.67%. This rate also anticipates no additional appropriation of general fund balance to meet budget expectations. Although it is estimated that there is adequate fund balance to cover unexpected deficits, it is also understood that significant reductions in fund balance weakens the net position of the city. At present, the net position for 2024, for December 2024, is unknown. Assumption that appeals loss value would be an estimated 5.1% or $19.5 million of the budget, and that overall real property tax revenue will be collected at 86% to include those estimated losses. An adoption of 15.99 mills. You're good. An adoption of 15.99 mills. The audited unassigned fund balance reporting of 59.4% at the end of 2023, with policy requirements of a 20% minimum There is an assumption that no significant amount of fund balance is necessary to offset expenditures over revenue for the 2024-2025 budget years. There's also an assumption that the total of fund balance needed to date will be the only amount of fund balance needed for the fiscal year, and that other necessary expenses to be offset by the general fund balance appropriation will not exceed 20% of the minimum fund balance percentage. There's also an assumption that a total general fund balance appropriation is necessary to date to balance the budget, and that amount again is 370, just over $370,000. And there is still the assumption that the appeals loss value will be estimated at 5.1%. So the 15.999% mill rate does present several assumptions and is derived based on those assumptions. Oh, that was a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager. And so
Thank
that
you.
was the presentation of the 2025 millage rate. And so we will now move to the public hearing portion of it. At this time, we will allow anyone who would like to speak to come to the podium. Do you have, Ms. June, do you have a list? Okay, but you can come up to the, because I remember you first. We'll just have you come up and state your name. And then if you would press the button so that the green light comes on the microphone like mine. There you go.
All right. Well, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, my name is Byron Delgado. I'm a member, a community member. I live in the city of Clarkston. First of all, I want to thank all of the leaders, city leaders, and service people, city manager. I want to thank you guys for your service, your honorable service. Anytime I have a chance to thank each and every one of you guys, I do, because I know the job is difficult. Okay. With that, I'm here to express that this is the very worst time in history to ask our community for a higher cost of living. For families like mine with small children, I'm here also for my neighbors who are already stretched out. I know I'm stretched out, and I know there's people struggling a lot more than my family. I'm here for our collective well-being. I want all of us to keep our jobs. I'm here for our future, for our city's future, for our city to be a beacon. It truly has been a beacon. The title of what I wrote here on my phone is Unintended Consequences. Okay, first let's talk revenue. I understand I'm making cuts in my budget. Honestly, like my kids are like, hey, what's going on here? I'm like, sorry, kid, you know. So I completely understand your budget. But this measure is anti-development. Okay, first of all, revenue. Businesses will be paying a higher cost of business. Okay, that will disincentivize them from investing. Okay, it will keep them from growing. Some businesses might even fail. Some businesses might choose to leave. When business fails, other businesses do not want to come here. Okay, I mean, businesses will do a simple search of the millage rate and see that we, let me skip a section just to give you a comparison. With the initial proposal of 19.2 millage rate, we are 16 points higher than Dunwoody, city of Dunwoody, 11 points higher than the city of Buckhead,
Right.
uh, 8 points higher than the city of Atlanta, 7 points higher than the city, sorry,
Okay.
7 points higher than the city of Decatur.
So, and I want you to finish your statement out because we want to make sure you had your 3 minutes, but I want to make sure you finish your thought.
Okay, I didn't know when my 3 minutes started, but okay. So, uh, okay, so this proposal will affect our businesses. Our businesses are already stretched thin, just like our families. Okay, it will affect the city's revenue and our future well-being. Okay, people, our mortgages will go up, rents will go up, renters will pass on the cost of taxes to the tenants. Uh, there's a lot of people, a lot of my neighbors that are rent, man, they're already stretched out.
Right.
Okay, they're struggling.
So I'm going to let you do one last sentence because it's over the time, and I wanted to make sure you had a chance.
But okay. This proposal will cost more than what we're intending to save because people will move out, businesses will fail, and our revenue will go down. So let's do this right. Let's research. Let's find. I'm not sure if you've done the research, the consequences of raising the millage rate at this particular time. Be careful. Please don't vote no. Don't do it.
Thank you. And who did we have next, Miss June? I know you signed. Did you? And just so you know, state your name, and once you state your name, then we'll start the 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Dawn Ora, and my husband Steve and I moved to Clarkston to retire in November. And one of the things we were looking forward to was paying much less taxes than where we were in Lake Claire, Candler Park area. And I came here because the proposed amount was extraordinary. That it just, so I was glad to hear the reduced amount. Right now, we're close to 13.89 military, and I think if you went to the 15.8, 15.9,
Nine.
like that,
Mhm.
that would be max. That's just what I have to say. Don't jump people so much in 1 year. I don't know what y'all were doing with the finances before we moved here, but somehow the city looked great. It was moving right along. So please,
Speak in the microphone.
so please, no, that's doesn't make any sense. Okay, thank you, dear.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have one on line. All right, Miss Brooks.
Hi, Mayor Burks.
Hey.
It's actually Mr. Brooks, but that's
Sorry.
okay. I just want to mention that, while I understand the need for an increased digest and improved revenue at the city level, I would concur with the other speakers that the current moment is difficult to justify such a high millage rate increase. I would say that, Avondale and Chamblee just last night decided to keep their rates the same, even though there were proposed millage rates increases. And DeKalb County itself is anticipating a 12.427%, or sorry, millage rate increase. And that would represent a 27.63% increase for the county taxes as well, on top of the city taxes. So, I do empathize with the kind of balancing act that our city officials have to go through as we try to improve the city which requires money, and balance that with the needs of the citizens at this moment in this historic time for our city, our state, and our country. But I would just say that I think if we could stay on the lower end or keep rates unchanged, that would be ideal for the city at this moment. That's thank you so much for your time.
Okay, and state your name again, please.
Yeah, Mr. Taylor Brooks, over on Pecan Street.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone else? Yes, please come up, state your name.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Wingeier. I'm married to Dawn. And one thing she forgot to mention is that we are retired. We live on Social Security, and our income doesn't go up just because our tax rate goes up. So I know there's other people in my situation. So please keep that in mind. We love Clarkston. We just moved here and we really like it. And we'd hate to have to go somewhere else just because we can't afford it. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on. You want to speak? State your name.
Hey, I'm Simone Wilson. I live over actually near Taylor. I live on Jolly Avenue. And Taylor pretty much said what I was going to say. I had done a little bit of research and saw that a couple of other towns had decided to not go up in DeKalb County. And I'm a little confused about how it all works. And I'm a little ill prepared. It's been a long work day. I did pull up some stuff last week. And saw that and I missed a little bit of the beginning of the meeting, so this may have been addressed, but it looked like the rate at which Clarkston wanted to increase was a good bit higher than some of the other towns, and I didn't really understand why, that's why I'm here. I just, and I also missed I didn't realize there were other meetings. I've totally missed that. So I just wanted to be here tonight for a little bit and try to get some understanding. So it doesn't seem appropriate at the time to go up so much. I mean, if I did the math right, I think my little house, my insurance could go up quite a bit at this new millage rate next year. $600, I think, if I'm looking at it right. That's kind of a big hike. So anyway, and if we want people to come and live in this community, maybe we don't go up quite that much, especially with everything else going on in our country right now. People are potentially going to start, having to pay more for other things, lose insurance, things like that, or have to pay more for insurance. I'm one of those people. So maybe that's a consideration, is that we kind of, peak it up a little bit at a time if we can. And again, I don't know what you guys are dealing with as a municipality. I understand that there's expenses in the community. So. That's all.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Do we have anyone else online, or do we have anyone else in the audience who would like to speak? Do we have anyone else online, or do we have anyone else in the audience to speak? Do we have anyone else who wants to speak at this time? Hearing no one else, then we will close the public hearing, which will move us to item 4C, to approve an ordinance to establish real property ad valorem tax assessment for tax year 2025, to establish the tax levy rate for tax year 2025, to establish reductions and exemptions of such tax levy for tax year 2025 and for other purposes. And so at this time, I will open it up and allow questions before we actually, make a motion for the rate. So council, at this time, you can ask the city manager or our finance director any type of questions that you have. Councilman Perkins.
Well, it
And you
sounds
can
like my
still
time is
speak.
up.
Your
Okay.
time's not up yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Ms. Miller Thornton, I'm not sure if this would be a question for our finance director. Can you just go through each of the assumptions? And my understanding is with each of these different millage rates, we have three options in front of us. There are a set of unknowns and associated risks with each one. I was wondering if you could just walk through those with us.
Yes, sir. What specific, because she went through the piece.
Just the, it doesn't have to be details. I think just bullet points again, because we covered a lot, and I know we had members of the public coming late. So
Okay.
I believe there's a number of assumptions for each one.
So with the, with anything less than the 16.625, and let me just reiterate for the public that that the 19.298 is no longer on the table. Right, we have done a substantial amount of work in our offices, in the finance office, to look at costs, to reduce expenditures, and to give thorough due diligence to an analysis of our financial condition with the information that we have. And so the 19 plus mill rate is no longer a recommendation. Anything less than the 16.625 mill rate, which at that rate, that is the rate that we are able to fund the 2025 budget with all of the reductions that we mentioned earlier, without additionally assessing or appropriating general fund balance reserve. So a mill rate of 15.999, and again, any mill rate of the less than 16.625 we will have to operate under a few assumptions. One of those assumptions is that the loss of digest for appeals will be 5.1%. So we have experienced over the past 3 years, we have experienced as high as a 41% loss. And last year we experienced a 17% loss. So we are estimating, just based on the number of appeals that have been presented to the tax assessor's office, and we won't have an additional update on those appeals until July 18th, which is beyond the date for presenting our millage rate to the tax assessors to present to the tax commissioners to present the digest to the state. Another assumption is that no significant amount of fund balance will be necessary to offset expenditures over revenue for the 2024 year. So we cannot adequately state the amount of general fund revenue that we might need to balance the 2024 budget, because those financials are still unaudited. We are currently reconciling 2024. You want to speak to that? We'll kind of tag team this if y'all don't mind.
Yes, good evening. We're in the process of reconciling all of our December bank accounts and December 2024 bank accounts. We're almost there with the general fund. However, we run into some complications. So we hope to have that done no later than the end of July of 2025.
An additional assumption is that I've already talked about the loss value and general fund appropriation, specifically for the 2025 budget year. At adoption of the budget, council appropriated $80,000 of general fund balance reserve to balance the budget. Since then, we have it has been determined that the $95,000 that was assigned to the City Hall moved to 736 Park North from the police seizure fund is not an appropriate expense from that fund. So the only other place we have to pull that from at present would be our general fund appropriations, general fund balance. And then the additional $260,390 for the mill rate at 15.8 mills would be in addition to that general fund balance appropriation. So our assumptions are centered around current net position for the city, beyond December 31 of 2023. So that's a little bit over 2.5 years that we're still reconciling. Um, Present fund balance, the balance of 2025 budget, and assumption that what we know about our general fund appropriations will be enough, even to date. And of course, the assumption of appeals loss value would apply to any one of the rates. So at the 16.625, you have really two assumptions. You have your estimated appeals loss value at 5.1%, which is going to be an assumption no matter what rate you adopt. And then you have the assumption of the collection rate. And that will be an assumption no matter what rate you adopt. The general fund balance assumptions come with any other rate that you adopt under the 16.625. I have a talk with every council member over the last several weeks and several times today. Whatever rate you adopt, the city administration, my office, the finance office is committed to manage that rate and manage it to the benefit of service delivery. So what we don't want is, and I do want to, this might be in addition to your question, additional to the question that you asked, but I think this is a good place to put this note. We have made almost $600,000 in salary expense cuts for this particular budget cycle. And that doesn't just mean cutting people, that means cutting the people that will provide service, right? And so when you make additional cuts to a budget beyond that, that $600,000 is significant for a budget year that is already beyond the 6th month in the year. This year's half over. So we've made $600,000 in cuts for now through December 31, which cuts the number of people that will provide service. And so if you make additional cuts to the service line items, you have not only cut the number of people that can provide the service, but you are cutting the resources that the limited staff can provide those services with, right? And so I think we've done a good job at a $600,000 almost reduction. I think that's wonderful, right? We did, our due diligence to pull those things together. Okay.
And so just,
Go ahead.
So putting this in analogy for those of us like myself who aren't finance majors, we threw out a lot of technical terms. And essentially what we're looking at is the projected revenue that we were basing our 2025 budget on was based on total billed. So imagine we have a business, we're sending out invoices. That billed rate is not always the amount that you collect. Anybody that owns a business knows you get some loss there. And so what our music manager discovered was that we were estimating that with about an 18% difference between total billed and total brought in. There are numerous things, implications to that. And so basically what we've been doing for quite a while has been, if you kind of think of it as like a checking and a savings account, we've been kind of dipping in to our, emergency fund just to try and make sure that we're, kind of keeping the bills paid for a little bit. And there's some timing issues in terms of what made that, I think, possible. Some of it has to do with when the county gives us our revenue from taxes. As you've heard our city manager mention, there's a lot of unknowns still where we're kind of asked to set the millage rate, which defines our budget for the following year before we really even know what that millage rate's going to be. We don't even get that information from the county or what that delinquency rate is as well. That's not to blame anybody one way or another, but, just hopefully to explain a little bit of the challenges that we're trying to navigate. Which leads me to a follow-up question. You already teed me up for this, which is what are the implications of us getting this wrong? So say we adopt one of the lower rates, and I guess give me a range of possible outcomes and implications for the city and also for our residents.
Well, of course, your assumptions can always be wrong in the negative or the positive, right?
Sure.
And so if we adopt a wrong rate, then I think the biggest effect of it will be a reduction of service, right? That's the biggest possible effect. Um, and we know that in the present times that we are in, when nonprofit revenue is being cut, programmatic revenue is being cut, our citizens are going to be looking to the city to provide services that these other organizations can no longer provide. And if we are in a position where we can't provide the services that we really do provide, then ultimately we are doing a disservice to our citizens.
Okay.
So that's
Right.
that's
I
the
don't mind if I
biggest
got more
thing.
questions, but
You
I
got,
want to hear
you
from y'all
done?
too.
Okay, Councilman Carroll.
I think this is so much a question, but kind of explain to the public a little bit of how we got here. So last year, when we make the budget, we have to do it. We've been doing it in December before we know what the property tax is actually assessed by DeKalb. And historically, DeKalb had increased the property tax assessment of each property by about 10% each year. So we budgeted based on that assumption that DeKalb would continue what it had been doing, which is a 10% increase in the assessed value of all the properties in the city. And then in the reality, what we found out is, which we don't find out until I think April or May, that DeKalb only increased it by 3% this year. So that's basically a 7% cut from the revenue we were expecting and budgeted for. Instead of 10%, it's 3%. And that's a drastic change when so much of our budget depends on the property tax. So, and there was also some unexpected expenses that came from moving the city offices, which as some of you know are getting moved down to another building since we're kind of overflowing our current city office. And so as a result of that, that's partly why you're seeing these increases. And now in order to fix this next year, we're moving the start of the budgeting until June 2026, when we'll know what the property tax base is, because by then DeKalb will have already assessed it. So we can budget based on knowing actually what is assessed and what more likely what we're going to collect in property taxes, as opposed to having to do it in December where we were kind of guessing what DeKalb will assess or not assess. So, you know, it is kind of, understand it's kind of shocking, especially to see the 19% rate advertised. But, you know, I don't think we're going to hit that. Just kind of explaining why there needs to be some increase, because essentially if DeKalb had increased the assessments, that would functionally be a tax increase on you as well, right? You just wouldn't be paying a higher millage rate. You'd be paying it through the higher assessment rate. But they didn't. And that's why kind of where we are here today.
Mhm. Now, I want to make sure we stop and thank our city manager and our finance director, because she just started in March. Okay. So for her and our finance director to do the analysis, to do all the deep dives, to make sure in terms of all of the information that she has provided, going back and forth, um, she and the team have done a wonderful job. And I want to make sure, especially for our residents who are like, well, where is this coming from? They have spent tireless hours to find the best way to ensure that we come up with a millage rate that will be able to provide you the services and support that you need, but also make sure in terms of the city that we are able to function and do the roles and things that we need to do. So I want to make sure to thank the staff for doing that, because for her to come in March and to make significant findings as she has, that is very important to ensure that you continue to get the service delivery that you so deserve. And I'll turn it over to Vice Mayor Johnson. Okay, and then I'll turn it. You don't want to talk? Okay. Okay, Councilwoman Bell.
Thank you, everybody. Listening to the comments, so thank you all for that, and also thank you for the staff and all the work y'all done. I just want to land a few points to make sure that people are clear. I keep hearing the question, how did we get here? And so, City Manager Miller Thornton, if you could talk more about the appeals differential value, which for members of the audience, this is essentially the difference between the assessed value of a property and the fair market value, and people saying, hey, this is too high. And so City Manager Miller Thornton, if you could just like clearly state what that differential value was, and then I have a follow-up question.
So there are a certain number of properties that have been presented for appeal, and we'll use 2024 as an example. And so during the appeals process, a resident or residents or owners of properties present an appeal to the tax assessor's office to say that my property was not adequately assessed. And so the loss in appeals, the loss value is the amount of money, the amount that the property was assessed at, right? And then the amount the property drops to in assessment at the end of the appeal. And so 1 year in 2022, 2023, there was a value loss of $127 million for the city, right? And so, in I think last year it was about 30 something thousand dollars, and we estimate this year, based on the number of appeals that have been presented and an average of the appeals value, we estimate it'll be about $19.5 billion. That is an assumption based on historical kind of assessment of the appeals rate. So the appeals loss value is the amount that the digest decreases based on successful appeals of the values of property. Okay.
Thank you.
Alderman
Thank
Bell?
you.
Mhm.
If I can follow up with that. Is that okay? Is that okay?
Yes, go ahead.
You're breaking up a little bit, but
So, sorry. Can you hear me? Hear me echo?
Yes.
The other question that I want to make sure we clear on is the question that keeps coming up at the podium is how do we get here? Previous administration, before Ms. Miller Thornton and the team came along, can you talk about Ms. Miller Thornton versus build versus average collection rate? And like what our percentage has been on average to where it caused us to also be in a deficit.
Right. So an analysis of, and this is information that was also held by previous directors, but an analysis of the collection rate of real property taxes for the city plus is about 81, 82%. When you add in the loss value, that brings collection to about 86%. And so when you adopt a budget based on 100% collection, and there are a couple of different assumptions about how the budget was adopted previously. Okay, I heard Mr. Carroll say that the budget was adopted based on an assumption of an increase in the digest at a certain percentage. That could very well be the case. Calculations show that the assumption can also be that the budget was adopted based on a higher collection percentage at around about 100%. And so it's prudent to adopt your budgets based on the amount of monies that you historically collect. The same way you would determine what your franchise tax is going to be or your insurance premium tax and things like that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councilwoman Hood.
Thank you. Can you speak to the situation with our 2023 budget? Is that totally audited and in final, the numbers are final, or did you say we are still looking at that?
No, ma'am, we're still working to finalize work papers for our 2024 audit.
2024
Yes,
audit
ma'am.
of the 2023
No, ma'am.
budget.
2023 budget has been audited. That cycle has been completed.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Mhm.
It's 2024, that, right. All right,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
So I have a question, ma'am. The
Yes.
question I think Ms. Hood is asking is if I'm looking at the general fund balance for 2023, that would have been presented to us in 24. Were the losses already taken out of that fund? I don't know who this question is for. If we have $4 million, but we still have it, or would those losses have to come out of it?
You wouldn't necessarily have, if you had $4 million in fund balance at the end of 2023, that does not mean you will have $4 million now. we don't know what the fund balance assignment would be for 24, right? And we are estimating about $400,000+ of fund balance needed to balance the budget to date, right? And so without without increase in revenue over expenditures and only the assumption of what we need to balance the budget, your general fund balance would have reduced. Now, the city has a policy of 20% of fund balance, 20% of revenues is required as a minimal fund balance. So this year we have just on average a $10 million budget. That means we would need to retain $2 million in fund balance in the city's in the city's general fund balance. Do we have $2 million? I would venture to think that we would. that we wouldn't have depleted fund balance by $2 million in the past year. So I am confident that we are above the minimum. What I do have, and Ms. Hammond and I have talked about this, and she can speak to this too if she would like to. What I am concerned about is that your fund balance, the healthiness of your fund balance is usually depicted by your stability of cash flow, right? And so without understanding or knowing what our current net position or fund balance is, and we are still having to borrow cash to complete a fiscal cycle, that doesn't necessarily depict a healthy fund balance. And so until we can get 2024 audited, those are some of just the reservations that we have.
Okay.
Do we have an anticipated date of that completion of that audit?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Hammond just presented that we expect to have December 2024 reconciled by the end of July. And so we'll have our work papers to the auditor within the month of August. And it typically takes maybe 2-3 months. 2-3 months to complete the audit. So we have presented a request to the Department of Audits and Accounts to extend our report date to December 31, just to give us time to get it all squared away.
Okay. Any other questions from the council? Okay. All right. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion at this time.
I have a motion, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I move that we set a 15.8 mill rate for the 2025 millage.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, it has been properly moved and seconded that we set the millage rate for 2025 at 15.8 millage rates. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Ms. Miller Thornton, can you, I'm looking at the sheet at the 15.800. Can you share what will still be negative if we adopt that millage rate, or how that will affect us?
Yes, ma'am. We'll have a estimated revenue deficit of $260,390 in tax revenue, plus the $80,000 that has been previously assigned, and the $95,000 that is to be assigned. So the total deficit total reduction in fund balance will be $435,390, just under $500,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion or questions at this time? Councilman Perkins?
Yes, and just again, I just want to, because we're talking in a lot of technical terms. So when we say $435,000 deficit to date for the general fund balance, walk us through that again. What are we looking at? Is that something where we're going to have to start cutting staff? Is it something we're going to need to take out a loan to cover that balance? How have we dealt with that?
Right. We've already significantly reduced staff. I don't think that there's room to do any more with that. We've cut over $500,000 in staffing. So this means that we'll just have to assign $435,000 of our currently unknown fund balance to balance the budget as amended to date. We don't equate having to borrow money with where we are, because that's a little bit of a different concept. The fund balance is really cash and anything that can be liquidated quickly that you will have on hand to meet certain, like this deficit.
And to that point, one of the things that we'll do in terms of cash flow, because the way the tax commissioner sends you the money is based on the April date and the October date, but usually it's towards the latter part of the October, November timeframe. So what we would typically do is have a TAN to make sure in terms of borrowing that fund so that you can function until the tax commissioner provides the revenue from the property tax.
That's correct.
And I
Yes,
just wanted to
ma'am.
bring that point up is that, we're hearing all of this. What we typically have done for several years, several decades is have that TAN where it's issued by the bank. And so that helps to ensure that we are able to function. We have the funds, we're able to pay the bills, and then we'll have the money as November from the tax commissioner's office.
Yes, ma'am. We do anticipate needing a TAN this year, around about the first week in August. And so we have actually the request for proposal was posted on today. And so we'll have some additional information for council moving forward. We want to bring the resolution for TAN issuance before the council in mid-July to meet that first week in August kind of deadline of needing the cash reserve.
So Councilwoman Hood, and then we're going to wrap
Yes,
up.
just for the citizens, the TAN is a tax anticipation note. And it gets back to what Mr. Carroll was saying about timing. We don't get all of the revenue from the county that we need before the next year starts. And it's very common for cities to seek a tax anticipation note that puts that money available to us to operate the government until all of the revenue comes in. It's something that we have done in the past, and what we try to do is increase over the years our reserves so that eventually we can get to a point where we have enough reserve cash that we don't have to take a loan for that gap in time when we're operating the city and have expenses to pay, but that we haven't got the money.
All right, with that being said, are you ready for the question? All in favor to approve a millage rate of 15.8 for our 2025 millage rate, say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? That's why Councilwoman Bell, did you vote? Did you vote? Councilwoman Bell, did you vote? Is she there? Okay, all right. So just to make sure the motion passed, I just want to make sure we had it. So we had Councilman Perkins, Councilman Carroll, Councilwoman Adi, Councilwoman Hood to vote yes, and then Vice Mayor Johnson to vote no. And then we had, I'll just say abstention from Councilwoman Bell. I just wanted to make sure for the record. Okay, with that being said, we will move to adjourn the meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Second, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded that we adjourn the meeting. All in favor say aye.
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 Motion passed. And then we will now adjourn this meeting and we will start in 2 minutes the work.